Hi, it's me again, and this is wow, we're already up to the 11th, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but the 11th video journal for my International Public Relations class. And this week we talked about ethics, which was actually really quite interesting. It's been sort of one of the more sort of thought-provoking. I found that I sort of learnt or took away sort of a lot from this class. I like to think that I'm a fairly ethical person, but sort of that's just something, it's like almost like a term when you actually sort of think about it. I'm like, well, what actually are my ethics? What actually are my morals? How are they different? How are they the same? Where do they come from? Are they based on law? Are they based on religion? Are they based on my upbringing? Yeah, and I sort of, in class and sort of a little bit on the drive home, was thinking about it, and it's kind of hard to determine. And I know in class we talked about being we talked about cultural relativism as opposed to absolutism. I think don't worry, some of these words I have found that I just can't pronounce, and I'm kind of happy to accept that. But yeah, so we're looking at sort of how, I guess, how relative our ethics are as opposed to sort of absolute. So absolute would be sort of no grey area whatsoever, black and white, right and wrong, and then relativism is more based on the situation. It's all, I guess the extreme would be everything is relative. Every little decision is based purely on that situation and the factors pertaining to that situation. And I feel, for me, that I'm definitely lean more to more to a relativist as opposed to an absolutist. I do definitely believe there are grey areas. There's always a but, or there's always an if, or there's always an exception to the rule. I don't think I'm in the extreme in that everything is dependent on every little situation, every little factor. So I'm definitely sort of in the middle, but I would tend to skew towards being a relativist as opposed to an absolutist. And we're sort of like talking about sort of those ethical questions that come up, talking about testing of like medical products on animals, or testing of other types of human products on animals. And again, for me, I feel that sort of medical testing is necessary, especially if it's going to help a lot of, whereas I don't believe that testing something sort of more trivial like makeup on animals is right in any way, shape or form. But in saying that, while I do try to look out for sort of products that say like no animal testing, at the same time the ones that sort of don't say either way, I don't necessarily spend a whole lot of time, in-depth time, trying to research and find out if they do test on animals, which in some ways, I guess, I don't know how that affects my ethics. And if I believe that it's wrong and yet will still use products potentially that have been tested on animals, is that even worse than someone who says, okay, look, I just don't care that much, I'll use products that are tested on animals? So that was sort of like a sort of dilemma that came up for me, and I definitely think that in the future I'm going to try to be a little bit more aware. I know that in comparison to some other people that I know, I've never been, some people are sort of, maybe they are, I guess they are more postmodernist and they question everything and want to research and know everything, and are really sort of maybe passionate about the environment, or passionate about animals, or passionate about some sort of corporate social responsibility area, and I've sort of never necessarily been that way. So I'm definitely trying to be more aware of things. That's sort of one of my, I guess, goals for the new year. So yeah, I don't know, it was something that I didn't necessarily realise about myself, that I kind of realise now about my ethical stance on certain issues that I feel should be more black and white and probably aren't. I was trying on the way home, so I know we talked about it in class, and I was trying to think of things that, is there sort of a world ethical stance on something, and I don't know if there is one. I'm not saying that there necessarily shouldn't be one, because I think for some things, I definitely think sort of harm to others, there should be some sort of ethical stance, and sort of those sort of base things should exist, but I don't believe they do at this point in time. Maybe the whole do unto others as you be done by is something that could be a worldwide ethical stance, but even that I don't necessarily think exists at this time. It's about two of the main sort of, I can't remember what we call it. I don't know if they're sort of like ethical standpoints or ethical backgrounds, ethical theories. I'm sort of blanking on the word, but we looked at sort of, now another word which I cannot say, utilitarianism. I do know the word, I just can't pronounce it, and what I've written down on my notes isn't right, but you know what I'm talking about. And basically looking at how that sort of view is doing what's right for the majority, even if it sort of maybe impacts negatively on a small minority. If it's the best for the majority, then you do it, as opposed to another word I can't say, denatological. I can't say it, but I do know the word, sorry, and that's basically the one where if there's going to be any negative impact, even if it could potentially benefit a lot of people, if there's any negative impact, we don't do it at all. And I sort of, when we were sort of asked about this in class, I had kind of forgotten a little bit, but I do remember us looking at this in consumer behaviour of all subjects, but which was one of my first subjects in my first trimester, which is why I'd sort of forgotten about it. But it was interesting to sort of revisit that and decide which, I don't know if there's one that's better. I also don't know necessarily which one I fall into. The whole idea of doing what's right for the majority, even if it sort of hurts a minority, seems like the way that I think a lot of things are done. I don't know if I'm sort of overgeneralizing this, but I think maybe that's what tends to be the most employed ethical standpoint, I guess. I know some of the examples we talked about are like I've just said about medical testing. Now the potential of a drug to hurt those few people who do test the drugs is definitely there, but at the same time, if the scientific discoveries that are made can help the rest of the world or find a cure for cancer or something like that, then is it wrong not to do it? I don't know, because it's so easy for you to say, fine, do what's best for the majority if you're not the minority that's losing out. And I think in my life, in my personal experience so far, I couldn't really find an example where maybe I was in the minority that was losing out. I'm sure there probably is somewhere, but in terms of sort of the big things in my life, I don't necessarily I don't feel like I've fallen into a specific minority group, like if I maybe had Aboriginal background or something like that, and that may have impacted me in a negative way, things like that. So it's kind of hard, I guess, to know what viewpoint to take when you haven't necessarily been on that minority side. So it's definitely something to think about, and I don't know if there's a right answer, because I want to say, okay, well, don't do anything that'll hurt minority groups because they need our support the most. But then I think, okay, well, if you're not going to do something that could potentially hurt a lot of help a lot of people, how do you sort of move forward? And so again, I honestly, I don't know, and I am sort of thankful that in my life so far I haven't sort of been in a position of power or in a position where I've needed to make a choice of something like this on a large scale. I'm sure there are sort of small things that maybe I've done that fall into one of these categories, but I haven't had that decision. I think any decision that has some sort of ethical basis or something that is going to impact a large amount of people, I don't think there is a easy choice, and I don't think there's necessarily a right choice, because I think no matter what, no matter which stance you take, someone's always going to lose out. So that's kind of hard. But we were also talking about, in terms of sort of practical PR, about working towards a win-win solution, and I would like to believe that sort of, I guess, at least on a small scale, there are opportunities for win-win situations, and I think a lot of that comes into giving people choice. Having a choice to, I think we're using the example of testing, going into sort of medical testing. Now, if you sort of do it because you're struggling for money, or because you're forced to, because there's no other work, no other job, or because someone tells you you have to do it, someone in power tells you that this is how it's going to be, then that's not right. Then that's definitely never going to be a win-win situation. Opportunity to talk about things, to discuss things, to have a choice in the outcome and the solutions that are employed and the tactics that are employed, definitely will work towards finding that win-win solution, or even a compromise if that's what it has to be. It's kind of, talking about it in class definitely opened me up to sort of, yeah, thinking about these things and talking about them, and maybe as part of my new awareness kick, I'll try and sort of talk about these things with my friends. I know that we sort of said in class that the best way to bring light to these issues was to talk about them and get people to discuss, and you can argue and debate and whatever is necessary, and maybe that's something that try with my friends, see what it's like. So I think just talking about it, if everyone sort of got together and talked about these things, and then went to work and talked about them again, and then went out into other aspects of their life and talked about it again, you definitely get a more of a movement. And I definitely feel like looking back and talking about this and thinking about this has made a change in the way I view things. I don't know whether this will be my last video journal, or whether I might do one more. Maybe after I've watched everything back, I might do an overview of sort of some of the things that I have learnt or taken away from this class. If this is my last video journal, I just want to say that I've really enjoyed sort of going back each week on a weekly basis and reviewing sort of what we've talked about and thinking about it and talking about my opinions or what I've sort of taken away. It's been interesting. I think it's been very therapeutic in a way. It's sort of something, one of these assessments that, in amongst my millions of other assessments that have all been very stressful, this is sort of one that I've enjoyed, and I definitely enjoy it. This is the sort of first time ever I've had a journal where I've actually gone along every single week. A lot of the times, any kind of personal reflection or even journal, you sort of skip a week or leave it till the very end. I know I've been guilty of that before, but going through it each week has definitely helped and made it a little bit easier, and I think I've gotten more out of it. I'm sorry that it's going to be super long. I don't know how I'm going to quite edit it together yet. If you are watching this and you've gotten to this point, I'm hoping that you maybe have fast forwarded through some of it, so you haven't had to sit for so long listening to me blabber on. But anyway, until next time, bye for now.